Welcome to the spoiler talk for The Deep by Alma Katsu. Remember, she could be listening to this. Her deep ties to the intelligence community. So let's be careful what we say.
I want to start off at the end because there's one piece that I need just to talk through because I'm going to stay right up front. I believe that everything in this story makes sense. Like, there wasn't anything that really confused me. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. I would. Okay, so yes. But I think that a few things were left ambiguous enough. It didn't bother me, but just ambiguous enough that it would fill in the blanks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so here's the part that I want to just talk. I just want to walk through this part. So kind of after the fact, we figure out everything that happens because it's laid out toward the end of the book. My only confusion is so at one point Annie goes down and drowns herself because she had a miscarriage. At the same time, more or less, Jillian, is it Jillian? Lillian, excuse me. Lillian had just thrown herself in the Thames, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Sea Witch was like, "Hey, Lillian, I got you covered. I got this other dead girl. Let's throw you in her, and we'll give you a second chance." Is basically what goes down, right?
Yes.
So my question is, what is the timeline of how things work out between when Annie drowns herself and when Annie possessed Lillian gets on the Titanic? That's the only parts that I don't understand.
Yeah, I think I don't want to say immediate, but so Annie goes missing from the house, right? And we find this out when we flash back to her mother coming home, like her mother finding her there bleeding from the miscarriage, and then she goes to pray with the priest that knocked her up, and she comes home and she's gone. So I think that the Debassi, I don't even know how to say it, but the Sea Witch, essentially was like, I have a perfect opportunity because I control everything in the sea, so I can just put you in this body. Annie wakes up as Annie, both like Lillian as a passenger kind of directing her, and takes her to town and puts her on the boat. Because you have to remember, Lillian knows that they're going to be on the Titanic, so she kills herself when she finds the ticket. Now, I don't know how far out that ticket was, 2 weeks, a month, but they had a ticket, and Annie makes it there and gets a job. And boards at the same time as them, essentially.
So basically, so the mom runs to the church, all sobbing and stupid. Annie leaves the house. She never goes back to the house ever after that.
Correct.
She gets possessed by Lillian. And then the Annie, Lillian, and I'm assuming if there's like gaps in memory for Annie, it's because Lillian was kind of in charge or whatever.
Yep.
They basically motor it over to the Titanic, and they're like, "Yeah, I can be a stewardess or whatever," that kind of thing.
Yep.
That was the only thing that, like, and I knew that maybe I just wasn't paying close enough attention. I don't think it was explained, but like that was just the gap in stuff that I was like, how exactly did this go down? So like now it makes sense. But again, like I feel like this is a pretty airtight story. I don't think there's really anything to challenge or like to call out as being like a plot hole or anything like that.
Yeah, but I've just changed my mind on the entire thing.
Uh-oh, here we go.
So we know, all right, so I'm going to retake this. Annie's drowning, or the scene where she's drowning as a kid, happened when she was a little girl. Now, hear me out on this. Lillian must have taken over because there's the newspaper article. Her mother finds the newspaper article that has Lillian's name circled or underlined.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So and that's because when you said she goes out to drown herself, my first thought was that makes sense. I thought she died because of the miscarriage. And I still think she died because of the miscarriage. I'm thinking that Lillian, see, that's the problem. Now that doesn't work out. And now I'm doing the talking it through, right? She couldn't have died from the miscarriage because once she had the miscarriage, she left, right? We're talking about 2 hours she was gone.
She was all ashamed of the fact that she like was bleeding all over her house and she left. So that was definitely something that happened.
Right. So when would she have gotten the article? Because to me, the article is the indication that Lillian already possessed her. But we know that Lillian wasn't put into her body until she was dead, and she died from the miscarriage.
Yeah, I had the same feeling too. Like the article was important to her because it was her that died.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it was hidden, which would mean that after she went to drown herself, she came back home and then at some other point later on left.
Yeah, I don't think she drowned herself as an adult or as a young woman. Because the instance that
So
we
you
see,
think she just got possessed?
yeah, I think. All right, here we go. She had this incident where she almost drowned when she was a little girl, and they're very specific about that, right? Because that's when she starts talking about hearing things, and her dad freaks out and doesn't let her see her grandmother and shit anymore, right?
Yeah.
I think that the sea witch, for lack of pronunciation for the other term, maybe got in her then, and that's what made her susceptible. Like her exposure to her at a younger age kept her susceptible to being possessed by a spirit that the sea witch chooses. The only problem I see with that is the newspaper article and how that plays in. And I think she dies from the miscarriage. I think when her mother sees her, she's dead because she says she's not moving. She tries to wake her up. Nothing works. And instead of hightailing it to town, which was going to take like 2 or 3 hours, she just went and prayed. And then she came back and Annie was gone. So I think the time that the possession took place would be while she was laying in the bed bleeding. But that doesn't explain the newspaper article.
No. Yeah, that's all right. So I think it probably would bear through with a closer like rereading, because I don't get the impression that she wrote the story poorly at all. Like I get the feeling that like she gave us just enough information to piece it together, but maybe we weren't paying as close attention as we should have been.
Oh, I wonder if we should ask her about that.
I'm probably just going to I'm probably going to do some research after we,
okay.
You know what I'm saying? Just to get it nice and straight so that we don't sound like we don't know what the hell we're talking about. But, yeah, that was the only thing that really kind of threw me off. And it all takes place, all of the explanation for all of this, for anybody who's listening to Spoiler Talk who hasn't read the book, all of the explanation takes place over the course of a few chapters. But I guess maybe that's even a testament to how good the story is, that we care what went down instead of just being like, oh, something happened and there's a possession or something like that.
Right.
Because it's interesting. I find it very interesting.
Yeah. The other thing. So here's my question. And this is like some of the things that were left a little ambiguous, right? Caroline is positive that Ondine, is that how you say it? The baby? Ondine is choking on the crucifix, which makes sense because Annie loses the crucifix, right? So we don't know if Lillian, is trying to kill the kid or not. But Annie is sure that Caroline is giving the baby cocaine.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of those two things is right and the other one isn't. Like for some reason in my mind, I'm finding it hard to believe that the ghost or whatever is trying to kill the baby by making it choke on things. And the mom is treating it with cocaine.
So I'm going to try and clarify something for that. So Annie's first thought is that Caroline's given the baby cocaine. That's why the baby's so like sickly, which I mean, honestly, in retrospect, I never really thought the baby was overly sickly until they mentioned it toward the end of the book. Mm-hmm. But when Annie figures out that Lillian's all up inside her, then she kind of has a change of it was like that kind of Tyler Durden moment where she's like, I've been poisoning the baby, it was me. Like she had that kind of thought to herself.
Oh, that's true. You know what, I forgot about that because she had the brooch.
She had the brooch the whole time. I'm glad you said brooch properly.
What would
I'm sure people say brooch all the time because it's 2 O's.
Oh, I gotcha. No. Yeah, no, never mind. So you're right there. And then I guess then maybe Annie/Lillian also did try to kill the baby the other way, which is sticking the crucifix in its mouth because it goes missing from Annie.
And well, because the sea witch wants an innocent, like the whole thing was Lillian made a deal. I'm gonna get this second chance through this other body if I give the sea witch an innocent, and that happens to be my baby.
And the story gets to be so much darker, right? Because she hates the fact that she has a baby. She hates the fact that she lost her husband to another woman, and all she wants is that dude back, even if
Yeah.
it's going to cost her this child. And then the nice touch is Annie, when she's still in control, or at the times where she's in control, I should say, has this affection for the baby that, at first you might think is Lillian, but later on you find out it isn't. And when you find out about the miscarriage, I think it's that sense of loss, like that she has found another baby to care for when her own body was unable to care for the one.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a disembodied, like, maternal instinct or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, honestly, like, as the book was going on, I'm glad you brought that up, because that brings up one of the points that I was thinking about is, as the book goes on, basically everybody except for Annie becomes less and less likable. Like, they're like ghosts and skeletons keep getting like revealed a little at a time, and you don't really like Mark that much. You don't really like Caroline at all. You're really Lillian was okay, but obviously she did that awful thing where it's like, hey, devil, take my baby so I can be with my boyfriend again. So like everybody becomes less and less redeeming as time goes on, except for Annie, who really just, was heartbroken because her priest had sex with her and got her pregnant.
Yeah. And I guess, for people who didn't listen, I think she really loved him. I don't think I didn't get the impression that the priest was like took advantage of her and then dumped her. I think it was more of a Thornbirds kind of situation, that famous novel slash movie. Yeah.
He definitely left her high and dry, though.
For sure. Yeah. He went back to God.
Yeah.
The other characters that actually carried themselves very well through the course of the book. So there is Steed, whatever his name is, the newspaper guy. And I'm sure if I Googled it, I'd find out what his issue was with that girl. That was never like super clear. Like there was this thing in his backstory. Right. But he dives in to save Annie. Yeah, and sacrifices himself. And then the boxers. The boxer's story was actually kind of nice. Like Dai was always like a good guy who was just kind of supportive of this loser that he was in love with. But at the end, Les sacrifices himself.
Yeah, he got like the biggest redemption probably of any character in the story.
Yeah, and his story, like I said, even as a scumbag thief who's bilking people out of their money and stuff, and you go back and forth through the course of the book that you think he's bilking Dai too. Like you're never really sure.
Right. It's left ambiguous enough.
Yep. Until you get to the end and he pushes him in the light boat, and I was like, oh, he loved him after all. Like he really did love him, kind of thing. So, but yeah, the rest of them are all well, and that's So when we look, the redemption is for all the poor people except for the newspaper guy. Like he's the other millionaires are like fuck all these millionaires.
Oh, like this is that one woman who was the fashion woman who was like tried to sneak her husband, successfully snuck her husband on one of the lifeboats, and then like made them leave it like half full. Fuck that bitch.
Yeah. But see that, I'm pretty sure she's a historical character, and I'm willing to bet. I almost think I remember that from the movie The Titanic. So I think that might be actual history, like
historically accurate.
And you know what? What a crazy position to be put in. We'd all like to think that we would do the right thing, right? But when faced with like imminent death, it's hard to say what you would do.
And it comes down to character. Like, I honestly, like, I'm going to say this because I think people's perceptions of the two of us and the reality of the two of us are different things. I think you'd be more heroic than I would.
See, okay. And again, here's what I'll say. I would like to think that. But the realist in me says, man, if I'm faced with some crazy shit like that, I don't know. And God forbid we're ever put in a situation to find out on the Motley Cruise or whatever, but I would like to think that I would do the right thing. But yeah, I don't know. So anyway, anything else you want to cover from this book? Dude, the fact that cocaine killed Teddy, also great, that I didn't see coming. Like we're totally led to believe that was supernatural. Right. But he's just been fucking licking cocaine out of the brooch.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. I think overall, like, she did a great job of leaving, like, no strings, like, untied that needed explanation. Like everything that we needed to know somehow all made sense somehow at some point in the story. And the stuff that was left vague or ambiguous was not necessarily super important to the plot. So like, I think it was just, I think overall she killed it. She murdered it. I might have to like increase my ratings a little bit.
All right. That's it for this edition of Spoiler Talk. Might be another one next week. Who knows? We've got that left turn at Albuquerque coming up next week. We'll see if it's worth discussing in Spoiler Talk. But if not, we'll probably be back for Providence by Max Berry the following week. So keep checking back. Thanks.